Alright, hello again. We're just going to do a little bit of an update on the 16 integrated game editor for the Bitbox. Here I'm actually going to run it on the Bitbox. So here it is. It's currently on. Some of the speakers are outputting some nice sound here, and I'm using a cheap USB controller to change things, to control the system. Okay, so some of the recent updates are this, improved main menu here. But what I wanted to test, well, we can look at editing the map right now. So just by hitting L and R on the controller, you can kind of choose to edit specific parts of the game. Here I'm editing the map. The blinking tiles are actually sprites. And it's a little bit unwieldy to fix them and change them, but that's just kind of, you don't really want to have a ton of sprites right now, because that's just kind of makes things complicated. So what I did there is I specifically stuck down a sprite that has the number 0. It's the 0th sprite of this 16 that you can have 0 through 15. So the 0th sprite specifically, we're going to make it, and let's just make it, while we're at it, we'll do something interesting. Kind of change the map a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting to look at. Oh, and by default, if you hit the bottom of the screen, you won't die. At least that's kind of what I've been... The idea is, you want to encourage exploration. You don't want to necessarily, punish a person for falling into a hole, unless of course you put some tiles that will, hurt the player down there. So, oh, and so the reason the sprites blink are so that in case you want to hide some sprites in a block, and for example, if you can delete or destroy that block by hitting it with a move or something like that, that sprite will pop out. That's the idea. I haven't implemented that code yet, but that's kind of some of the things that are going on. I'm going to delete a few more sprites up here. The reason being, another reason why I'm deleting the sprites is because with the Bitbox there's only there's a limit to how many sprites can be drawn on a specific line and in general overall, and so just by kind of reducing some of the sprites, it'll just make things look a little nicer. But maybe I can show you what it looks like also. So for example, if I put down a few more sprites, so these are actually sprites, and I'll put down a few more 0 sprites, just to kind of show you what things look like. So if you press start, you press A to save, plus oh my goodness. Okay, so these are some of the patterns I've done from before, but you can kind of see some pixel glitches up here, kind of where there's all these sprites being drawn. Let's actually go back, and apparently that wasn't enough to kind of make issues. So let's add a few more sprites and kind of show you what I mean by some of the... Okay, so apparently okay. Well, you can kind of see some of these glitches, but apparently they're not as bad as what I said. But, okay. Oh, wow. Okay, so I apparently just froze it, which is fine. I'll have to see where that bug is, but we're just going to reset it. Probably is getting stuck in a loop somewhere. Oh, there we go. Huh. Okay, well that's interesting. So there's just certain times when having too many sprites on a specific line is just hard to draw. Okay, so we're gonna get out of there, and new from last time is we can actually now start implementing logic where you accept controller input from a player type of thing. So for example, this will be useful to create your hero sprites. You can do it for both player 1 and player 2. They can have independent controls, or for some reason they could be controlling the same sprite. There's so many possibilities that you can do. can also make it so that an enemy sprite will go the opposite direction of whatever the player is inputting half the time, or that sort of thing. So, okay, so what I kind of want to do is start over from scratch. So we're just going to put in a few, we're just going to put zeros everywhere for now. And so what zeros do is they, interrupt the command flow and just restart it. They put a little bit of weight in there, actually a 1 frame weight, just so that if you do any jumps or loops or that sort of thing, there's guaranteed to be some time in between when you do things. But anyway, that's one thing. So there's kind of 3 states that you can kind of choose to do things conditionally within. So for example, the first one is if you're not moving. So if you're moving or not moving, you can make that distinction. If you're running or not running, you can make that distinction. And running in this game is just by pressing Y on your gamepad. So, or that can toggle running if you put that into your kind of input list. You can also toggle running using another command, but if you want to do it based on input, it's the Y button. Okay, and we'll get to that later. And then if you're not in the air, or if you are in the air, you can kind of, so we got if you're moving, if you're running, if you're in the air, and if you're firing. So there's kind of some special logic with firing, but right now I don't have a huge amount of, I don't currently have the logic to spawn sprites and kind of create projectiles just yet, but that may be coming soon. Anyways, but we can, for example, make the firing button, which is X if you're using it based on input, make it so that you jump a little bit higher than you're used to. So kind of like a little, so let's see, so how would we do that? So for example, we have to go to, so firing, so this whole command loop is a little bit kind of, it's interesting to kind of try and think about how this works, but for example, if you're not firing, it's telling you to go to command and whatever the command is here. So 3, 4, 5, 6, for example. So let's just put it to 4. We could also make it so if you are firing, it executes these next few things, and if you're not firing, it jumps to command 4. So if you are firing, we want it to execute something. Specifically, we want it to execute doing a jump. But before that, I'm going to insert something before that, because we actually want to control the speed with which the player jumps, and so we're going to just make it so that the player has a little bit extra jump speed. So we're going to pop that up to 6. So and so then when you're executing doing a jump, by pressing the fire button, that it's just going to jump you really high. And so otherwise, so what we kind of want to do is it fires, you can jump, and then it stops execution and brings you back to the beginning. Okay, so now the next stage is, so this is just one way you can organize your thoughts, and this is the one I have. So for example, you can reorder things. Right now I'm going to make it so the next kind of command I look at is air, being in the air or not. But what's interesting is you could, for example, allow it so you're only able to fire if you're on the ground. And so if I wanted to do that, I would kind of switch the order of these operations, where kind of instead of first allowing you to look at if you're firing or not, instead look at if you're in the air or not. But maybe that's some homework that you guys can work on. So it's all meant to be very extensible, very very customizable. So if you're in the air, if you're not in the air, jump ahead. So we're going to jump to 8 maybe. So for example, so now if you're not firing, you go to 4, and if you're not in the air, you go to 8, but if you are in the air, then these next few commands fire. So for example, what we kind of want to do, if you want to do kind of more physics-based, although if you do it completely physics-based, it's not too interesting, but we do want to insert in here kind of your general move speed. You want to kind of so you can you kind of want to make it so you don't accelerate as much when you're in the air. So for example, if you want to be a little bit more like physics. But what you do want to do is if you set the acceleration here, you can also set the deceleration in the same command. And the way you do that is the first two bits correspond to acceleration, second 2 bits correspond to deceleration. So if I wanted to make it so that there's no deceleration in the air, I just put a number between 0 and 3 to allow you to. So 3 would be, you're allowed to accelerate quite rapidly. 0 would be you can't accelerate and you don't decelerate. But what I want to do is allow you to accelerate a little bit while you're in the air. And so I think what I also want to do is I want to set the move speed. And the move speed is just what is the maximum speed, using that acceleration you can get up to a certain speed. And so we're just going to set that to the highest. So in the air you can go as fast as you want to. We're also going to accept input. I'm going to find that. So for player 1, I could move it, and if I move the commands up far enough, I end up handling player 2 input. But let's go back to player 1 since I only have one controller plugged in. So I can handle left-right directions, I can handle up-down, I can handle left-right, up-down. I can do it kind of randomly. That's kind of maybe mean. So we're just going to do left, right, and up and down. Now, pressing up and down on a platformer doesn't really do too much, but technically in the code it does a little bit something so far, but it doesn't matter. I could set this to just doing left and right, but for now I'm just doing that. I'm also going to make it so that in addition to accepting directional input from the player, I'm also allowing special input. For example, if I want to be able to press the run button and allow that to toggle running, or press the jump button, for example, if you wanted to allow infinite jumps, you would put another, the ability to accept a jump input here. But what I want to be able to is accept running, so you can toggle running, or you can toggle firing. Oh, and I just thought about this. Normally I do air first, but maybe I should do running next as a way to allow you to change your kind of speed in the air. I guess I could do kind of a nested kind of conditional. So to do that, and hopefully this isn't too confusing, if I'm not running, let's see if I can do this on the spot. It'll jump to, okay, so maybe the easier way to do this would be setting two velocities. So for example, in the air, one move speed is 5, but if you're running, let's see if I can do this correctly, I can jump over to 9. Okay, so the idea here is now if I'm in the air, I go to, and we're going to move this up a little bit more to maybe see. If I'm in the air, my acceleration is going to be less, but so then this is always executed, the move speed is set to 5, but if I'm not running, I jump to 9, but if we are running, we set the move speed higher. Theoretically, I could also set, why don't we try this, we set the acceleration just a little bit higher for running, if you're pressing running while in the air. So, but to do that, now I need to kind of jump ahead to if I'm not running. So I want to skip these two commands, jump to this one, and for both of them we're going to accept directional input and special input. And so the reason I want to set the move speeds before I accept the directional input is because setting the move speed then, has an effect on your directional input. So, oops, what did I just do there? Okay, I cut it, so I gotta put it back in. Another thing you can do is just add a little wait time. And let's just see if I can push this forward enough. So now, okay. So now we have just kind of a little bit more flexibility when you're running. If you're pressing running while you're in the air, you have kind of some different move speeds and characteristics. So while I'm at it, I'm just gonna save it. Press start and then hit A to save. Yeah, so now we're going to move on. So we've set up our air characteristics. Now let's just set up our ground characteristics. So now everything that happens from, and I have to set this, oops, I kind of set the wrong thing. So I wanted the run to jump ahead to A. I wanted the air to jump ahead to E. So if I'm not in the air, to jump to E. Okay, so now I'm not going to set a specific not moving thing, but you could do something where if you're not moving, that's when you're allowed to fire, that sort of thing. So now we're actually just going to do some execution of things. For example, we're going to handle directional input, and maybe before that, again, we want to kind of set acceleration, deceleration. Oh, and okay, we can do even further. I want to kind of put in one more conditional, and I have to find it. Okay, if I'm running, I want to jump ahead a little bit. So, so if I'm not running, I want to do this where you have a certain acceleration and deceleration. And so now, since we're on the ground, we want to put in some deceleration. So for example, if I'm not running, I want to, okay, so if I'm not running, it'll jump ahead. So if we are running, I want to have low deceleration, so I want to start with 4, because 4 is kind of the lowest deceleration, and then I want to add in some acceleration, and I want to have a fairly high acceleration, so we're going to put that in at 7, and then we're going to add in some move speed. So what is the maximum move speed? And we're also going to we're going to set it also so that our jump speed increases as well. So when we're running, we're going to have a little bit of jump speed. Again, we're going to handle directional input, and we're going to handle, in this case, since we're on the ground, we want to be able to handle running, jumping, and firing, so we're going to put in all 3 of those guys. Okay, and then so now if we're not running, this is kind of the last and final frontier, we kind of want all of these same things going on. So we're going to have some, oh, and I sometimes, I just like to add in a little bit of weight, maybe. When you're running, make it a little bit slower to respond, maybe. So now when we are not running, we want it to jump to M, and so that's our next command here, M. So, and if it hasn't been obvious up to this point, if you are running, if you're on the ground and you come to this point, if you're not running, you jump to M, but if you are running, you execute these few commands, and then you hit L, which is a 0, and that pops you back to the beginning. So, and that's why you don't go on to execute these commands here. But so now that we're jumping to M, we're on the ground, we're walking, we haven't been pressing the run button. We're going to set our move speed to 3. We're going to set our acceleration to, so we're going to have a little bit more deceleration, so we want to get up to 8, maybe we could go up to C even, and we're only going to allow a little bit of acceleration, so 1. And then we're going to have some directional input, and we're going to have some special input, and again we can go all the way up to run, jumping, and firing. So we're going to save this, and I haven't actually really thought too much about if this is going to work or not, but let's just figure out and see if it will. So we're going to return to our main menu, and we're going to switch over to playing the game. So I'm going to press start. Alright, and so now I have control of, what's interesting is I have control of two different sprites, because I put 2 sprites that were sprite 0 on the map. So, this is definitely inspired by Not Enough Plumbers. That was a fun game. But maybe it's overkill for certain things. So I'm still not controlling I'm controlling the camera using the directional pad, which may or may not change at some point, but yeah, so you can see that, and let's see if we can get our firing to work. So the firing, I can jump, so this is firing, and that means just a little bit of a higher jump than this, so you can kind of see that. So if I try to do there was a double jump by using fire to the fire button to do that. So, okay, so that actually worked pretty well. I'm glad that that did. And there's things like you can't double jump because that's not what we've allowed in the game logic, or in the sprite pattern logic, I should say. Again, goofy things happen if you're all on that same level, but that's probably a bug in my drawing code, since sometimes it doesn't appear. So we'll have to see if I can optimize that a little bit. But alright. So okay, so that was kind of that. I guess I could do some goofy stuff now to show that there's other ways to set the patterns. So if I go back to our sprite 0. Okay, so for example, what should we do when it fires? I'm not sure if we should do anything more intelligent. Maybe make it jump higher, executing a jump. Oh, that would be maybe interesting. Okay, so there's other modes you can kind of toggle these ghost modes, and I haven't figured out what's the best way to think about doing that. But maybe I should try just on the spot to come up with something interesting. Okay, yeah, so why don't we do that? So if you hit the fire button, let's toggle ghost mode. And so what's going to happen there is once you toggle ghost mode, something interesting is going to happen. And we're just going to be kind of lazy. We're going to get rid of a bunch of things just because it's just, we're going to simplify things, kind of do something goofy. Okay, so we have, yeah, we're just going to start doing some commands here. So let's set the acceleration. We're going to have a little bit of deceleration, and then we're going to have a little bit of acceleration as well. We're going to allow some input up and down, and we're going to allow running, jumping, and firing, and that sort of thing. Okay, so I've never really tried this, so we'll see if this works as advertised. So okay, well, that does kind of work, actually. Okay, so here's the bad news. It works too well. Okay, so let's give myself a little bit more. We kind of need some more deceleration, I think. Yeah, so let's try that. Have a lot more deceleration, and then just a little bit of acceleration. Alright, handle directions, run, jump, and fire. Okay, let's save that. Play the game. Okay, so my character is pretty boring. I can't really do too much. But if I paused it. So if I hit ghost mode, whoa, okay. I need to figure out what it's doing there. But, it probably has something to do with the fact that it's thinking it's a platformer. And it's kind of adding acceleration. Anyways, so that's some funky things that are going on there. Should I try anything else? So I'll try and fix that in a future release so that you can turn on a ghost mode and then you can kind of float around the stage. In ghost mode you don't run into tiles. I'll probably make it so you don't run into sprites either besides the player sprites. So, but who knows, we'll see what I do exactly. But okay, so let's just make it so it does a jump. It'll be boring, but that'll be fine. Gonna switch this down, have kind of a slow acceleration, and so for example, if I do this, let us throw in running, because running is just so integral. I want to hold the run button down. It's just second nature. So let's make it so you get a little bit more acceleration when you do that. And we'll do. some kind of top speeds. We have a jump speed. We're just going to put that pretty high. And we're going to also increase our move speed. So when you're running, it's going to be kind of fast acceleration, high move speed, high jump speed, and all that sort of jazz. Okay, but if you're not, we're going to jump over to A. So if you're not running, you're going to get down here. We'll do a little bit of acceleration, deceleration type of thing. You could make it so you're not even allowed to move if you're just kind of how this works. It does kind of some weird things when you're copying and pasting stuff. But we're going to bring down the move speed. Acceleration, that was fine. Kind of have a lower move speed. And then allow... Okay, so for example, we could make it so that you're allowed to run and fire when you're walking, but when you're running, you're allowed to run, jump, and fire. That's true to life, right? So even if you're in the air, you can jump. Okay. So we play the game, and I just jumped over the ceiling, so I probably have to restart it. Okay. Oh, and it's also just a really tall jump, because it's, okay, so when I'm walking, I can't even jump, so something, I didn't set something too well there. But I do have unlimited jumps, because I allowed that. So, some of the weird things that you can do. I won't do too many more examples here, but if you have any requests or want to know how this works a little better, yeah, just ask. So I'll try and do, what's interesting to me, and, I understand how this all works because I've been coding it, but I probably should have better documentation for people who want to use it, who want to understand it and work through it. So just let me know if you're interested, what you need, more tutorials like this or more code. Yeah, there's lots to work on my end too. So, but with that, I'll be signing off. Thanks for watching.